All right, so get ready for this. Today we're diving into some pretty wild territory. We're going to be talking about psychic predictions, global conspiracies, and international politics all kind of rolled into one.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sounds like it's going to be an interesting one
Yeah,
today.
you got that right. Our source material today is a YouTube video, and it features this Polish psychic named Krzysztof Jackowski. And he's doing like a psychic reading, but get this, he's using a handwritten note from this prominent Polish politician, Radosław Sikorski.
Okay, yeah. I mean, using a personal object in psychic readings isn't unheard of. I mean, a lot of psychics think that it can amplify their abilities or something like that. But how does that tie into global conspiracies?
Well, so Jackowski claims that this note, and specifically one word on it, triggers like a vision. And that word is wolnomularstwo, which means Freemasonry in Polish.
Freemasons. Oh, okay. So for those who aren't familiar, Freemasonry is like this centuries-old fraternal organization, and it's always been shrouded in secrecy, which has led to a lot of speculation and conspiracy theories.
Exactly. And Jakowski's reading really leans into that. He basically says that this note reveals like a decision by the Freemasons, specifically like a really powerful Western lodge, to start a global war.
Wow, that's a pretty bold claim. It's important to remember that Freemasonry, even with all its rituals and symbols and stuff, is generally considered a benevolent organization.
Yeah.
A lot of it is focused on self-improvement and charity work, but that doesn't stop people from weaving them into conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
Right?
for sure. And Jakowski goes even further. He claims that Donald Trump is in on it. He says that all those seemingly erratic actions that Trump's taken, that they're actually all part of a calculated strategy, and that it's all been approved by these Freemasons.
So he's saying that all those, like the unpredictable behavior, the Twitter storms, the sudden policy shifts, that's all like a carefully planned act.
That's exactly what he's saying. He believes that Trump is intentionally creating chaos among the U.S. allies. Like he points to Trump distancing himself from countries like Canada, Greenland, even like some European nations. And he says it's all a way to justify not helping them in this upcoming war.
Okay, that's quite a twist. So he's saying instead of viewing Trump's actions as impulsive or like detrimental to international relations, he's actually saying they're part of a bigger plan.
Right, exactly. He's painting a picture of Trump basically playing his part in this larger play that's orchestrated by the Freemasons.
You mentioned this powerful Western lodge of Freemasons. So is he suggesting there are like different factions within the organization?
Yeah, he actually describes three distinct lodges. He calls them Eastern, Western, and Northern, with the Western Lodge being the most influential. And he claims that they have a significant amount of control over international decisions. And he even says they can influence media narratives.
So like a shadow government that's manipulating events from behind the scenes.
Yeah, basically. And he says they've given their approval for this impending global war.
Okay, so this war that he keeps mentioning, who does Jackowski think is going to be involved in this conflict?
He predicts a clash between the U.S. and the BRICS nations.
BRICS. Oh, right. That stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It's this block of emerging economies that gained a lot of global influence in recent years.
Right, and Jackowski claims that that this war is going to be rooted in a battle for economic supremacy. He says there's a new gold-backed global currency that's challenging the dominance of the U.S. dollar.
Ah, okay. So he's talking about like a potential currency war. I mean, a gold-backed currency, it's tied to this finite resource, which some people believe is more stable than, like a fiat currency like the U.S. dollar.
So is Jackowski saying that the emergence of this BRICS-backed gold currency is a threat to the U.S.? And that's a driving force behind this predicted conflict.
That's what he seems to be implying, yeah.
But wait, there's more. He also believes that this war, that it's actually already begun, and that it's playing out in some of the existing global conflicts that we're seeing right now, particularly in Iran. And get this, he says that that people will be afraid to even breathe at some point shortly before the war escalates.
Afraid to even breathe. Wow, that's a chilling detail. He doesn't elaborate on what he means by that, does he?
No, he keeps it pretty vague, but it definitely adds to the overall sense of dread in his reading.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got Freemasons, a global war, a currency crisis, and this cryptic warning about breathing. This is getting pretty intense. But where does Sikorsky fit into all of this? The Polish politician whose note kind of started all
Well,
this.
so Jackowski, he goes on to analyze Sikorsky's political leanings and his motivations based on this note. He claims that Sikorsky acts as a controller for American interests,
Good.
but he also suggests that Sikorsky actually favors German influence over American influence. He thinks that Germany is a more cooperative partner.
So potentially conflicting allegiances. That adds another layer of intrigue to this whole thing.
Absolutely, yeah. It makes you wonder about all these hidden motivations and the power dynamics that are going on behind the scenes, in global politics.
All right, so we've laid out Joukowski's predictions, but now I think we need to dig a bit deeper. Are these predictions based on like genuine insight, or is he just reflecting those common anxieties that people have about secret societies and global conflict? That's what we need to unpack next.
Exactly. There's a lot to analyze here, and we're just getting started. So stay with us as we continue to deep dive into the vision of Mr. Jackowski.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got this Polish psychic, Krzysztof Jackowski, and he's claiming that Freemasons are like orchestrating a global war, and it's all fueled by a currency crisis, and somehow Donald Trump is playing a part in all of this. It's like a crazy movie plot or something.
It definitely has all those elements of a good conspiracy thriller. But maybe we should take a step back for a second and think about the historical context here. Like the idea of secret societies pulling the strings. I mean, that's been around for centuries. Like think about the Illuminati, the Bilderberg Group, even Skull and Bones.
Okay.
These organizations, whether they're real or imagined, they tap into this deep fascination people have with hidden agendas and these powerful elites controlling everything.
Right. It's like this idea that things aren't what they seem, that there's like a deeper truth that's hidden from most people.
Exactly. And these anxieties, they tend to flare up, during times of uncertainty and change. And we're definitely seeing that right now, right? I mean, there's a huge shift happening in global power dynamics, like with the rise of the BRICS nations and this growing sense that the U.S. might be, losing its grip on things.
So you're saying Joukowski's predictions, they could be like tapping into these anxieties, just reflecting a wider fear that the world order is being reshaped and not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I mean, his reading, it plays into all these anxieties about these powerful groups operating in the shadows and manipulating events for their own game. And the Freemasons, with all their, history of secrecy and their strange rituals, they become an easy target for these types of narratives.
Okay, but even if we say, okay, maybe there is like an element of societal anxiety fueling these predictions. But what about the specifics? Like his claim that Trump is intentionally creating chaos. I mean, that seems like a bit of a stretch, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely a controversial claim, but it is interesting how he ties it into this larger narrative, Like he's saying that all of Trump's, unpredictable actions, they're actually part of this strategy to distance the U.S. from its allies. And it's all to prepare for this conflict with the BRICS nations.
But couldn't you also say that Trump's actions are actually doing more harm than good when it comes to international relations? Like, wouldn't alienating allies make the U.S. more vulnerable in a potential conflict?
Yeah, that's a valid point. And it highlights one of the challenges of trying to interpret these types of predictions. There's so much room for subjective interpretation and depending on your own political leanings, you might see Trump's actions in a completely different light.
Right. It's kind of like those optical illusions where you can see two different images depending on how you look at them.
Exactly. And that's why it's crucial to approach these types of predictions, with a critical eye. We need to be able to separate the genuine insights from the speculation and the fear-mongering and even the potential biases of the person making the prediction.
Okay, that's fair. But let's say, just for the sake of argument that there is some truth to Joukowski's predictions. What about his claims about Europe, specifically Poland? He makes it sound like the country is going to be divided and controlled by outside forces, and it's a pretty bleak picture.
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind the historical context here. I mean, Poland has a very long and often tragic history of being caught between these powerful neighbors. They've often found themselves at the mercy of larger empires and political schemes.
So this prediction, it could just be a reflection of those deep-seated anxieties about Poland's vulnerability, on the global stage.
Absolutely, and it also ties into his analysis of Sikorsky's note. He
Yeah.
he claims that Sikorsky is torn between representing American interests and favoring German influence.
Which seems kind of paradoxical, given the history between Poland and Germany.
It does, doesn't it? But it also speaks to how complex international politics can be.
Mhm.
Alliances can shift and historical tensions can be overcome if it means achieving certain strategic goals.
All right, so we've got conflicting allegiances, historical anxieties, and a psychic predicting global upheaval. This is a lot to process.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's important to remember that we're talking about predictions here, not facts. But even if we take Jackowski's vision with a grain of salt, it still raises some interesting questions, like how much influence do these secret societies or these powerful elites really have on global events? Is the world like really on the brink of this huge conflict that's driven by economic rivalry, and how much of what we're seeing on the surface is actually just a reflection of deeper hidden agendas.
Those are some pretty big questions, and I think we're going to need a bit more time to unpack all of them.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and continue our deep dive. Okay, so we've been talking about this Polish psychic, Krzysztof Jackowski, and his predictions about Freemasons, global war, hidden agendas, all this kind of cloak and dagger stuff, right?
Yeah, it definitely has that, air of mystery and intrigue to it. But like we said before, it's important to, approach these kind of predictions with a healthy dose of skepticism, right? Psychics, I mean, they often tap into those existing societal anxieties, fears, and they weave them into these really compelling narratives.
Right, right. Like how he connected Trump's actions, all those seemingly chaotic actions, to this huge Masonic plan for global war.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes for a good story, but is there like any real evidence to back it up?
Well, that's where, critical thinking comes in. We need to look beyond just the sensational claims and ask ourselves, what's the evidence? Are there other explanations that make more sense? For example, some political analysts might say that Trump's actions are just a reflection of his personality, or his political ideology, and that it's not necessarily part of some big orchestrated scheme.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But what about like the economic side of things? Jackowski was really specific about this new gold-backed currency, challenging the U.S. dollar and potentially even leading to conflict. Does any of that hold up?
Well, the idea of a gold-backed currency isn't new. I mean, throughout history, tons of countries have used gold as a standard for their currency. And the appeal is that, gold it's a finite resource, so some people believe that it makes it a more stable store of value, compared to, like fiat currencies like the US dollar, which can be, influenced by government policies and market fluctuations.
So is Jackowski saying that the BRICS nations, that they're basically trying to create this whole new global financial order that would weaken the U.S. dollar?
That's what he seems to be implying, yeah. And while it's true that the BRICS nations, I mean, they have gained a lot of economic power, in recent years, shifting to a gold standard on a global scale. I mean, that would be a massive undertaking. It would have, huge economic and political consequences.
Yeah, it would definitely shake things up. But again, is this a realistic scenario, or is Jackowski just kind of, engaging in a bit of economic doom and gloom?
It's tough to say for sure. I mean, the future of the global financial system, it's incredibly complex, and it's constantly changing. There's so many factors at play, and it's really hard to predict with any certainty, what direction things are going to go.
Right. Okay. So we should probably take Jackowski's economic predictions, with a grain of salt, just like his political ones. But what about his claims about Poland? He seemed especially worried about, his homeland being divided and controlled by outside forces. And given Poland's history, it's understandable why those fears would resonate with people, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Poland's its location, geographically has always made it a strategic target for more powerful nations. And their history, it's marked by all these periods of foreign occupation and political instability. So Jackowski's prediction, it could just be seen as a reflection of those really deep-seated anxieties.
Yeah, yeah. And he also suggested that Sikorsky, the politician whose note was, the whole focus of the reading,
Yeah.
he might have these conflicting loyalties, favoring German influence over American influence, which seems a little odd given, Poland's history with Germany.
It does seem counterintuitive, but remember, international politics, they can be really fluid. Alliances can shift, and national interests, yeah, they can sometimes override those historical grievances.
So what are we supposed to make of all this? Is Joukowsky like a real visionary, giving us a glimpse into the future?
Right.
Or is he just, a really good storyteller who's playing on our fears and anxiety?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think ultimately it's up to each individual to decide how much weight they want to give to these kinds of predictions. The important thing is to engage with the information, critically, to ask questions, to consider other explanations, and to form our own conclusions.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that's a good place to wrap things up. We've explored some really fascinating, albeit unsettling ideas today. We've delved into the world of psychic predictions, global conspiracies, all this international intrigue. We've examined the claims. We've considered the evidence, and hopefully we sparked some thought-provoking conversations along the way.
Exactly. And whether you believe in psychic abilities or not, I think there's always value in questioning our assumptions, exploring different perspectives, and just staying informed about the forces that are shaping our world.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the vision of Mr. Joukowsky. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.